Are you ready?
Are you kidding me? That's what?
Yeah, every so often it happens that Ryan is right.
100% right. Not even a little bit right.
Tucker Pullman, 2 points last game.
No kidding.
My man!
Hey, neither does me running shirtless, but that turned out very well.
Welcome to the PP1 podcast.
Hey. We made it. We're all in different places, and that's okay. Back from the holidays, back from a amazing Canucks win, from a Thatcher Demko stolen win-ish, almost given away. That's okay. It's all right. It's the PP1 podcast. We got Ryan, we got Ted, and we got the guy we said we were going to bring many moons ago. We finally were able to lock him in a room for hopefully the better part of an hour. Mr. James Rayburn, former manager of mine, former district manager.
Of mine as well.
I actually played on a ball hockey team with him briefly. I played on a play-on team with him, and I had to restrain him from beating up one of the players on the other team. I'm like, James, we need you. If you get kicked out, we're not good enough. So
just rumors. I
no,
don't know.
it's factual. Many people can back that story up. So
Yeah, there's been a few of those.
It's funny that he was my manager too, and I also played ball hockey with him. Isn't that
yeah,
crazy?
but you played more ball hockey with him. So
Ted was a
James.
legend in that ball hockey.
mm-hmm.
I don't know about that.
Well, the Rutland League, absolutely. Nobody worked harder.
What a funny league that was. Just cracks in the pavement, giant puddles, guys playing with wooden sticks, running around in jeans, looking like they're getting shot out of cannon with helmets on. Yeah, it was
Totally.
Sounds right.
That came up just the other day. Like, there's still the Sunplex League, and there's a lot of the old card is gone, and there's a few of us hanging on, still playing the kids' game. And someone brought up the Rutland League the other day. I said, I don't think anybody realizes what niche that was and how epic that was for its 3 or 4 years of existence. I think it was longer. The league was around longer, but when it peaked out, where it was a complete war zone, and
it was ridiculous.
Like it was as intense a hockey as you're gonna find for little to no skill and just running around with a weapon in your hand. And now people run around Rutland and with a weapon in their hand and don't play.
Not to mention that the actual rink we played in might have been a weapon, right? You got hit up against the boards and walk out with 3 or 4 huge splinters in your shoulder or something like that. It was something else.
There are segments of absolutely. It looked like it had been shot up. It was the night before. No, you weren't sure. It was great. It has its place in Kelowna folklore, ball hockey. The legend.
Those who know. So James, obviously, welcome to our show. We're brought to you on the Hockey Podcast Network. Also with DraftKings promo code THPN. You guys, the Hockey Podcast Network is a menagerie of hockey podcasts. That's a big word I'm using. So if you cheer for any team in the NHL, likely there's a show for you. In fact, for the Canucks, there's 2. And I'm going to get this out of the way before we wax poetic with James for the next hour. This has been a topic that's been skirted about for the last, 5 years. Who is no one ever says they're the best. No one ever puts that title on their show. Everyone says, oh, we're the 5th best or the 6th best Canucks podcast. And no one ever comes out and says it. We're going to say it tonight.
Didn't we say we're the best Canucks podcast in Taiwan?
Yeah, but we're going to claim it all in. PP1 podcast is officially the #1 Canucks podcast, the best Canucks podcast. And if you want to debate it, that's fine. Don't bother checking the stats. We didn't, but we're just assuming that we're at #1. And until someone else decides to statistically, factually claim that they are indeed the #1 bestest Canucks podcast, we will reign supreme. Come fight us. It's going to be tough. We both live on opposite sides of town.
Where are you coming from? What is this? What's happening right now?
So
he's making proclamations in 2024.
So if you listen to good friends of the show, Trust the Process, Wyatt and Bowman, and then there's Pucks on Net, they all kind of come out and they talk about no one ever lays claim to first. Everyone says they're the longest running Canucks podcast or the fourth best or the fifth. No one's ever like come out and say it. No one's ever been bold enough to go out and say it. So we're going to say it. We're going to create the debate. And I think stir the pot a little bit. I mean, hey, maybe the cream does rise up. Maybe we are. Maybe
Are you thinking like this, like Gangs of New York, you know,
Jets and
Anchorman type news team podcast? Yeah, where you guys all pick a side of the field. And
does any of you guys have a trident by any chance?
No, I got rid of that at the end of 2020.
That was not a net trident guy. I got rid of my trident as soon as the Kraken.
Yeah, that was my New Year's resolution. Wasn't going to keep the trident around anymore. It was too violent for.
It invited violence.
Yeah. So I decided let's roll with it. Let's see how long this lasts. I'm not quite sure how long it's gonna happen, but that doesn't really matter. James, we've been trying to bring you on for quite a long time, mostly to talk about the Rutland League, but we're gonna actually talk about Canucks. Likely. That's what we're gonna try to do. There's a lot that's happened. Like, I mean, since the first time we tried having you on to now, I mean, they're completely different teams. Right away.
Frankly, I sandbagged. I waited basically a decade for them to get better, so I had more to talk about.
I fucking knew it.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Truth's out there now.
Yeah, played the long game. Like, like they're not ready for this yet. They're not ready for this. The Canucks, for the first time,
needed to get a sponsor.
Yeah, we need a sponsor. You could sponsor us if you want.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And
whatever works. Right. Yeah, whatever works. We'll if that's how we get the money, that's how we get the money.
Okay.
So the Canucks swept the New York/New Jersey road trip, which they haven't included Buffalo because they didn't get to play Buffalo, but that's on Saturday. They swept for the first time in history. Then the pen wasn't mightier this evening, and the Canucks actually went and beat the Pittsburgh Penguins as well. And that was a crazy good game. Guys, the Canucks might just be legit. What that means in April, May, and June is yet to be determined. But for now, we're cheering for a team that might just be good enough to change some minds at this point. James, we had this chat last night a little bit to test out our internet connections, which is basically the fancy way of saying I just wanted to make sure his laptop worked. Like the team that we thought we knew a year ago, getting Kuzmenko, talking about how he turned down a really good Joey's dinner to sign with the Canucks, and now we're talking about Kuzmenko in a different way. We're also talking about the Canucks like they're up for how many potential awards this season. Like, what is going on with this team?
Okay, well, let's address the Kuzmenko thing right off the top. Well, let's go. So let's go Kuzmenko. Last year was non-expectations. It was a free ticket, right? And the team played a level of hockey that wasn't winning, but he was able to just play and there was no reservation in his game. He was able to just go out, produce. They gave him ample opportunity to make error and play a freestyle game. And I think that's what you got out of him as a result, right? And I think, which wasn't a bad thing, like not at all. You got the player. The only negative now is that you've got him on a contract that you could say that he's not playing to his contract. And that's where he's at, in my opinion. And I think, in fairness to the player, you based his 2-year deal on what you saw in 1 year, 39 goals, right?
That's a pretty good assumption. Like you're going off of, hey, the guy just put up 39 goals.
Is he going to come back and do that for year 2? No, he's not a useless. No, not at all. I just think that there would have always been some planned regression in his play and his productivity. So that's but we're teeing off on the negative, and it's just really a result of a player. It doesn't necessarily mean, and where is he in the lineup? Well, he's supposed to be a top 6 forward. He probably is a top 6 forward as far as scoring goes. producing offensive chances, but is he a top 6 forward on a championship team? That's the question that the Canucks find themselves in as they're in this transition from what we saw last year to what they are today.
Kind of an awkward situation too, because that's a good question. Is he a top 6 forward on a championship team? Well, a year ago, no. And a year later, like, well, he may not be, but he kind of is on this team right now. So technically that would check out whether he's that guy or not. But, they weren't a championship type team last year. And now we're having a completely different conversation. Ted, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the house money thing that's definitely like a big factor, and everybody talked about like regression in shooting percentage, which I think is oddly similar to where he was last year. He's just not getting afforded the same type of opportunities that he was before, right? So I think it hurt him because we had like a solid first line running, and then you move Miller back, or you move a center into the number 2 spot. You have a number 2 line that looks really good and doesn't look like he has necessarily a space on those number 2 lines. You can't break up that third line because he's been so dominant this year. So all of a sudden you see Kuzmenko playing on the 4th line, and that's not something you want from like a $5 million or $5 million plus winger.
That's also not where he fits either.
It's not where he fits. It's not the right spot for him. But I mean, yeah, the first season was kind of that dream season. It gave them all the opportunity to do whatever they want, whether it was not to lock him up or whether it was to trade him for better pieces or dangle him, right? There was lots of things you could do. Like they're hoping that, he was going to fit in and be that top 6 guy. I think there's still like a world or a scenario where that happens. But right now, with them putting the Lotto line back together, it opens up like a bit of a space on the second line for him, which is fine. I think he kind of let that go a little bit, but at this point, they don't need him to produce. Like they haven't needed him to produce these last like month or a month and a half. And then they can kind of go out there and use him on PP1 like they like to do. Hopefully wait for him to round out his game. What's best for everybody is that if he just sorts his game out and he becomes a viable piece for them again, right? But I don't necessarily want to trade him unless it's to shore up another option. When you talk about trading for this team, everybody's talking about getting another quality defenseman, or which again is a funny thing because this team all of a sudden looks like it has a bit of defensive depth all of a sudden, but getting another defense piece or getting another center, right? I mean, it's strange when you're moving what looks like a top 6 forward out for possibly another top 6 forward. And I don't know exactly how they do that without having to just give up a ton of pieces, which I don't necessarily want to see.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good idea. It's definitely not. Well, if they were with a bullet, that they were the team that everybody believed, like around the league, that they were going to be the team to go, yeah, then maybe you do give some pieces away, but they're not. So they actually still have to figure themselves out before they start parting away, because they've done a lot of the parting away in the last decade, basically. And this is the first time we're like, oh, should we do it again? Can, solidify our chances, or do we still play it safe and see what we have?
When are they though, Ryan, with a bullet?
Yeah, that was exactly my question.
I don't know. Like that's a tough call, because if we're talking about getting, and we're talking about Kuzmenko right now, but if you're going to go out and get whoever you believe is the guy that's going to put you over the top, or at least put you in a position to contend this season, I mean, as of right now, they're the first place team in the NHL, and they have been in that boat for probably the last month and a half. So I guess it just comes down to if if management believes that they are indeed that, and they truly believe in their heart of hearts that this team is capable of going all the way, and then they pull that trigger. If not, then I think they have to just keep playing out the games and, let all the scenarios kind of unfold until it's, basically next to midnight, and then you got to make that call. Because that's a good question. They probably are with a bullet right now, but are they actually, down the road? Does, one injury, we've talked about this at the beginning of the season. What happens if, I don't want to say it, but what happens if who gets injured on the back end?
Come on, dude.
I said who. I didn't say the name. It's
What
sports
happens
emotion.
but what happens if you know who gets injured on any team that has the potential to have the bullet, right?
So here's one thing. Me and Ryan, we talked about this briefly last night. Is that I think right now in the NHL we've seen the league adjust through the cap era, and let's just say in this post-COVID era, is that your winning team, your elevation of your team into an elite Stanley Cup contender, and that window that opens up. Would we agree that window no longer stays open after 5 seasons for sure, and that your general window to win with your peak players at their best contracts and their best ages is generally a 3 to 5 year window at best,
and
at
maybe
best.
even 3 to 4. 3 to 4 might even be a bit tighter. Yeah, that was a good point. Exactly.
So then if I look at the Canucks first of all, as a fan, this has been, how enjoyable is this? It's like truly, it's good hockey.
I mean, tonight was a great example, right? Like you're like, well, they got Pittsburgh, and it comes down to one play in overtime. They almost won it, and they still made it look awesome in overtime.
And their stars are stars. The role players are playing the roles. They got back to defining the type of hockey that they want to play. It's funny, they said, and again, Ryan, our conversation last night, we spoke about their defense, and their defense has made all these personnel changes, but what was the one thing they said they wanted to get? They wanted to be mobile and they wanted to be big. Well, what are they now? They're mobile and they're big. And they were able to do that around the pieces that they already had. And really, obviously, Quinn's ascension into this top 5, top 3, top 2 defenseman in the league. Mm-hmm. Obviously that propels it, but that's taking a good team or a top 10 team into its this Stanley Cup contender, right? And so with that, I look at that and I say the Canucks, I'm like, okay, all their key players, all their prime players are all in their prime. They're all in their peak right now. They're all performing at the levels that we would expect. You could say probably 3 of them are on team-friendly deals, not withstanding Pettersson's extension, but just sheer on the dollar value of the contract right now. Yep. Kim, Hughes, and Demko are all outperforming their contracts. So at some point, we have to look at this the way we looked at Colorado, the way we probably looked at Washington and maybe St. Louis to a lesser degree. Certainly the way we looked at Vegas last year is that your prime players are on their prime contracts right now. And is it going to, and what is it going to look like in 3 seasons from now versus where it is right now? No, right?
This is that we had this conversation like 3 episodes ago. Like, how much longer can you wait? Because we can't even come back next season and think that this squad's going to look anything like it looks right now, especially from a D perspective.
Nope.
So you either have all your players performing at their absolute peak, at the apex of their careers, on team-friendly contracts, and you make a move to help them out now, or they have big contracts moving into the future, and then you got to be creative about how you're filling this team out with gaps.
And then you probably, and I mean, the easy comparison in that is then now you're into the Toronto model, which is you've got peak players on their peak contracts, and you're just basically, surrounding them with cap tight deals, and hopefully players hit. And you're taking a lot of what ifs and throwing it at the wall when you start doing that with your roster. Now, the cap going up is going to change some of that and the cap mechanics over the next.
But even next year, only so much.
Right.
Like, and most of that's going to be a next year problem, right?
The Canucks have an OEL tax for the next 7 years. I mean, that's just the reality of the business they chose. So they've already said in some ways that this year was going to be an all-in year. And there's no way that in their most honest, and I don't even think they would be dishonest about it. I think all of them would say, okay, they're outperforming where they thought they'd be. They wanted to be a team that competed for the playoffs this year. They're a team that's now competing as one of the best in the NHL. And I think as a fan or as an evaluator, as an analyst, you have to start asking yourselves, okay, are they not only surpassing expectations of the fan base, but are they also now surpassing the expectations of the management team? And are they going to make decisions based on that?
Yeah.
Yep. Bang on.
Can I bring something in? Because I know this is going to be deep, and I just want to lighten the mood for a second.
Yes, I love the Black Skate.
Ted, welcome back from surgery. Welcome into your new podcast room. It looks really good.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Good to be back.
I mean, the acoustics are absolute garbage, but other than that,
I got work to do still.
Yeah. Because we were all wondering,
a little more effort to get it ready for tonight, but that's just
James. Did you see the picture that Ted posted of his setup.
Yeah, shocker, I saw that.
So it looked really good. And you know, it was really exciting. I knew that once we started, everyone's like, oh, that's a great setup, Ted. Like, awesome. I knew when it came to podcast time, I'm going to get to know that door really well.
It's going to look better. You're going to be surprised.
This is what I do.
I had to put this together in 3 days so that I couldn't be screwed up and not work on it for the next like 2-3 weeks. So that I can still pod and still work.
You're going to have to get some creative product placement on that door moving forward. Like
that's a good point.
Like some cutouts of Ryan being Ryan, you know.
Good idea.
Ryan around the city.
Get Ryan in his Yarko Rutu jersey.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Those are all good ideas. Those are all good ideas.
Just big head Ryan. You can, post
we actually have a t-shirt of that.
Perfect.
Someone asked you, like, someone asked her, like, is that a picture of you on a t-shirt? I'm like, actually, it's me and my friend, actually. So
that's gold.
So we do what we got to do. Speaking of good things, the Lotto line apparently is back, and they basically were the game tonight. Aside from Demko and his left leg, which I made the joke that I think they need to ensure that left pad leg, like they did Danielson in Brazil back in '94. Remember that? Remember the Brazil soccer player? He had his left foot insured for $1 million.
I did not know this story.
Because he scored. So it's a good story.
Didn't Heidi Klum have her legs insured?
Oh, probably. And I think Halle Berry or something like that. Or anyway, J-Lo, I think. But there was a soccer player, Danielson, for Brazil, and his club team insured his left foot because he scored like an obscene amount of goals. And this was like that killer Brazil team that had Fat Ronaldo and there's a few other guys. Anyway, like he scored all of his goals with his left foot, and then I think someone insured like the left half of his body or something like that for like 10 million pounds or something. Like it's a crazy story. You should go online and check it out. But the way Demko was playing tonight with that whole left pad save, I'm not even kidding around. That's a real story. Usually I have a joke there, but I'm actually telling the truth on that one.
I have a delivery. Hang on. This is live.
Delivery, is it like pizza?
He's out there swearing. You're interrupting.
He actually just threw his son into a wall. That's awesome. So anyway, Lotto line. So we're talking about the Lotto line. They're back scoring. I think they said they had that line combined for 28 points in the last 9 games.
Oh, even the game against the Islanders too was just ridiculous. The level of continuity on those give and go plays, especially in close when you got that many guys working the puck, like 3 guys in a phone booth is what it looked like. It was ridiculous, like unreal.
And so that's where I go back to what that's elite, right? Completely elite. It's to be able to be at that level of play, to be able to produce offense, to basically you're giving yourself a 2.0 or a 3.0 to start the game, and you've got Demko in net. Like you're basically statistically you're starting the game at an advantage over almost every team in the league. And I think we've seen that. I mean, it's elite, and I think you're allowed to, as a fan, wrap your head around it. It's to me, it's as dominant. It reminds me of the dominance that the Sedins had at their peak with Kessler on the power play. Do you remember the 2010, 2011 where it was automatic? It was
a matter of fact. Yeah,
it was a bank deposit. It was going to happen, and I mean that gave you the chance to win a hockey game any way you needed to win it. You may not score on the power play that night, but 5-on-5, you're going to get your digit. On the power play, you're going to add your digits. You get a goaltender of that caliber that's able to keep the game the way it is and be ahead of the game the way you can play this way. So you can be up 3-1, lose the lead, and still score and win the game. I mean, it just pushes you into that different type of winning category, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not just fighting for a win. You're already starting. Basically, you're playing not to lose at that. Not you're playing not to lose, but you've already kind of got to win. You just have to play out the 60 minutes.
Yeah, your whole game changes. Your game of hockey changes because you can play for 60 minutes the way that you want to play because you've got this ace up your sleeve. At any point in time, you can turn the game on its ear. You're down by a goal, you can get a goal. You're up by 2, you're not worried about what the other team's going to throw at you. It's very much, is it not very much in the most recent bias what Vegas had with the Eichel line last year or what Colorado had with the McKinnon at his peak during that playoff run? It's just simply, to me, that's what it reminds me of. And it's just an absolute treat to have as a Canuck fan.
And it's hilarious too. Like I remember at the start of the season, they were talking about like we're not sure who we're going to play with Hughes. Like we don't know if we want to put him and Hronek together. We might want to split them up, spread the wealth
Right.
around a little bit, and those two end up together, and it's elite, right? It looks elite. It sounds elite. It sure as hell is elite when it's running around and it's moving the puck like that, right? And then you add into the fact that they roll them out like a 5-man unit. Now you're adding Hronek and Hughes to the Lotto line, and it's even more filthy. So you spend all this time at the start of the season saying like we're not sure if we're going to pair Hughes and Hronek together, and we're not sure. The Lotto line could just be a for now thing. We just want to get some things moving again. We want to get some guys going again, right? But like, why fight it? I mean, I guess it's a really good fail-safe if things aren't going well and you do need to spread the wealth around a little bit. But I mean, at any point for you to have that in your back pocket to just go to it and just let them. I mean, you're just sending them out there and just creativity at will. It seems like, right? So yeah, why fight it? I mean,
I don't
just let it go.
And and I'll ask you this just simply from a talking standpoint, is that you do wonder when they made the decision to keep Miller over Bo, which is really what they decided to do, economically, hockey wise. We don't need to rehash it. It was clearly the right decision at the end of the day. The assets that they got back for Bo has changed the trajectory of the team. It filled out a roster. It gave them a player they didn't have in that elite, or at least that top right-hand side defender. Awesome. Mm-hmm. You got to wonder, and I do wonder if the Canucks always knew that Miller was the best version of what Petey needed to play with. And I have as a fan, as a hockey guy, I have said that for 4 years since the COVID year, was that the best player that Petey ever played with was Miller. And so, but the Canucks flexed that out, and I think it was during that era that Miller became the ability to be a 2C. But he doesn't have to be a 2C, right? And so you have this ability to move him in. Where are you going to find a power forward that can put up 100 points?
What a luxury! Like they've ran that metric of his height and his weight and his point production, and there's so few guys that do what he does from a physical standpoint, but also from a skill standpoint. It's ridiculous. Like I don't even remember. I can't remember where I heard this, but I don't know if there's anyone else that sits in that category. And you have to go back a ways and find like a Ryan Getzlaf or something like that, or a Jeff Carter before you get a guy that has that ability physically and that maturity in the game offensively.
Yeah.
Well, and he's got the spark too, right? Like he's not just your scoring center / winger or whatever. Like he's a bit of a badass too. Like he kind of brings that edge too, right? Like which he's had since he basically got here. Like he kind of has that snarl. And I mean, you have that built-in playoff guy, right? Like all of a sudden you get in and we could use the Ryan Kessler model, like the beast mode kind of thing. But you now have a guy where you get in and you're thinking, okay, well, we've got one of these guys up front. So he's going to come to bat for him. But we also have them on defense. If it's not on that line, you've got a Connor Garland who is playing out of his mind right now on the, what do they call it? The good boys line, or the, what did you call it, James? Or the Garland line?
The happy accent line?
The happy accent, or was that you, Ted? Yeah. The happy little accents. Like you've kind of got like this edge to a handful of guys on that team, and they're already here. We're not having to look for them. They're already here and they're doing that thing. Like you talk about the Vegas model or the Washington model or the Boston model we've talked about, or LA. And like right now the Canucks are like their own model. Like they're like their own weird like model that I don't think can exist anywhere else. Not to say that they're, this shiny thing that no one else has ever had, but it's definitely a different version of one of those type of teams. You know what I mean? Like there's just like different things are hitting on. If you were to compare it to a Colorado, like it doesn't operate like a Colorado team did or like a Vegas team did. We've got the pieces kind of in a different configuration.
Yeah, I think here one of the things I practice as a fan is I often will go and say, okay, what are they missing? What are the key ingredients that this team's missing? The last 10 years it was a soul. But we made it. No, it was, but this year, as the year went on, you're like, okay, what are the key pieces that they're missing? And I kind of go through these rosters of players, and I mean, there was only a handful of players, and I kind of kept circling back, and I was like, they actually have the player that they need the most, and that's Miller. He just happens to be playing as a 2C. And so the genesis of and I would also state, like, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I think the ability to go to the lotto line and to come off the lotto line is what's going to actually help separate this team and maintain their position at the top of the Western Conference now till the end of the year, barring injury.
That's the ace in the hole.
Sorry?
That's the ace in the hole right there.
Right? Yeah, 100%. It's a game changer. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. And I think we're seeing it play out because the players are seeing it and sensing it. And they've now eclipsed this. We have this elite performance right now that will allow us to win the game. So now each of us just have to do our job and do our role, and we're going to get a W. We're leaving the city with a win. That's a powerful thing. And so in saying that, I also want them and enjoy, and I'm completely going to fan them when, hey, they need to move Miller down to the second line. They need to get depth scoring. They haven't, in doing this, they haven't played a Western Conference team yet, right? This run that they're on right now is a lotto line, is all against Eastern Conference teams. It's against good Eastern Conference teams, but it would be against.
But it's not the teams that they're going to be facing.
What I want to know what Vegas is going to throw their way, right? Which is great. Let's see it. I want to know what I think where the genesis of this came out of the St. Louis game. And I think what St. Louis threw at them is what we're going to see more and more as the games tighten up against some of those heavier Western teams, which is, this isn't a track meet. Get through our mucky middle, and then we'll see what you can do.
Make the game gross. That's what that's what makes this team so good. That's what gives this team the things that they need, right? You got a guy like, obviously Miller is just a bag of dicks, right? But he's our bag of dicks. That's what we love about the guy. It's the same thing we loved about Ryan Kessler, and he's heavy and he plays heavy. And then you go a little bit further down the lineup, and then you have to deal with a guy like Sam Lafferty who can burn and also lean on you physically. And then you go a little bit further down, and then you have a guy like Nils Höglander that you have to deal with. He's just like an annoying pain in the ass in the mold of like an Alex Burrows or a Matt Cook type. And then you go a little bit further down the line, and you have to deal with a guy like Dakota Joshua, who is heavy, shows way better hands in close than you would expect, has really improved his game over the last little bit, and he's physical. He's going to lean on guys. He's going to fight you too.
Like, and he's smart. Like, can we know I watch him play, and I'm like, I don't love everything he does, but I appreciate. But
his hockey sense is great. Yeah,
that's an intelligent player. Yeah.
He's in the right spot. Like that empty netter the other night, was that not the most strongest indication of the way that he read that play? He just picked it off, changed his body angle, intercepted it. The puck didn't even get to the blue line, and now he's shooting at an empty net. So it's a subtle play, but you got to give him credit.
Add on to the fact too that there's so much flexibility within this roster, right? You have your Suter who can play center. People forget that Teddy Bluger can play center. Dakota Joshua can play center in a pinch, and then you still have Nils Oman on this roster that's like kind of carved out a role on the fourth line as a center. And these guys are, although he's not super physical, these guys can all skate well. You can give them that, right? They're all intelligent defensively. And when you're trying to get into a game that they want to take away and be a track meet, and they don't want it to be a track meet, you have to muck and grind. We've got the roster to do that. If you want to get into a matchup-based situation where you're going to have to deal with McDavid, all of a sudden, you pull Miller off. And if you want to match him C for C, then you can do that. You have that flexibility, and then all of a sudden you're freeing up, Pedersen and whoever else you want to put with him on that line. You can flex it and turn it into a track meet. This roster really is built with a crazy amount of flexibility when you really sit down and look at it.
Yeah, exactly. I still think they're a bit light, if I'm being honest, for 4 rounds of the playoffs. But we were just hoping to get into the playoffs. So to start talking about 4 rounds, I think it's almost ridiculous. I think it's just a matter of, you have to see everything that's happening in the moment, enjoy it as a fan. And I think as a hockey guy, you're able to look back and say, hey, there's a lot of pieces here that have come to the surface and that are there should be able to win with, right? Are you able to win with? And I think that's a great comment. I hear it a lot, especially the Vancouver media. There's a lot of guys on the roster that I think you can win with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look at PDG too, right? Like, I know he's on IR right now, but look how many guys have kind of stepped up this season. Like, again, the Connor Garland thing, that was a story until it instantly wasn't. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe he just bought in.
I got a great story about Connor Garland here. It's just perspective.
He's going to pull his mask off. Connor Garland's on the show right now. Watch this.
Yeah. with his
Just
neck guard.
get to
Anyway.
like angle the camera down. You can see him.
Yeah.
He's the first guy ever to wear a bantam neck guard in the NHL. But anyway, that thing's huge. But good on him. He's being safe. I appreciate it. So Connor Garland, when the Canucks made that trade, and I was familiar with his game from Phoenix, right? And I will be the first to tell anybody, I was not upset about the OEL trade. When that happened, I was like, I like this. Why I liked it for me was that they got a left side defenseman to play behind Quinn Hughes that was going to eat all the PK minutes. And at that time, he had shown that PK probably wasn't his strongest standpoint. And so I thought that was great. And the other thing I thought it would do is it would give them able to run their second power play unit through a left-hand defenseman, something they didn't have the year before. So that's why I was good with the OEL deal just on the defensive side. But then when the trade was getting announced, I'm in my car and I'm reading Twitter and and we'll get to the Twitter thing in a second, but I'm like, okay, well, I said, hey, like they gotta get more than just OEL if we're giving the 9th. And I'm thinking to myself, it's got to be Connor Garland. Connor Garland or Schmaltz. I thought it had to be one of those two. And then I saw that was Connor Garland. I thought, fuck yeah, we got Connor Garland. Because I'm thinking we get Travis Konechny. Okay. And so wrong. Like really wrong. So
it's proven to be true. Yes.
But Garland, if you go back, Garland had actually scored a goal against the Canucks the season before or whatever during, anyways. And it was a really mucky goal. It's close to the net. I never clued in with how small that guy was. Then, no, it's true. So I'm like, I'm amped about this team, and Sun's playing down in Vancouver, so I get tickets to the Philly game, and it was like the second home game of the year, and I'm like, fuck yeah, I can't wait to watch this. Get down and warm up, and Connor Garland comes out, and I swear to God to you, I looked at him and I was like, that guy looks like the size of the little kids that come out and warm up and do the anthem thing. And I'm like, there's no way this happened. And instantly in that moment, I'm like, this is not good. This is 4'8", $5 million for 5 that won't be able to ever get to the net. And that was my take. And so my takeaway. And so if you remember Bruce Boudreau, when he ended up taking over, one of the first things he said about Connor Garland was, yeah, he's a feisty little guy. And that's how you wrap up the Connor Garland thing. And so I have to give credit where credit is due as a player. I think he's done.
What's more vulnerable than a peach in a
yeah, right. Oh, he's an angry little Connor Garland. But but man, I have, like, as a fan, I admit, like, that was not Travis Konechny. And that's kind of what I thought we got. And I was wrong. And I think Vancouver's management team and the switch and all the coaching staff, I think they had a really hard time figuring out what to do with him for the first 2 years. Because he's not a guy, like, if you watch him play, and he works his ass off. He's got great offensive instincts. He actually controls the play. I think Drance has been on this from day one. He does control play, but he takes a very certain amount of hockey intelligence or stylistically to be able to play with him. And I think the role that he's in is the only role that he can be successful in. And that's my analysis, because I don't see him. How can a guy like that, who needs the puck and spins and does all his spins, and if you're a guy that plays the game north-south, you can't play with that guy. And if you're a guy that plays or needs the puck to be on the inside, you can't play with that guy. And it's not that he's not an effective NHL player. I'm not dumb. I can see the game. But I think it took the Canucks 3 seasons and basically giving up trying to move him or his contract, and all of a sudden settling and saying, okay, fine, here, you just do you, but it's very effective. And we've seen the results of that because they surrounded him with players that had figured out how to play with him. But it took them 3 seasons.
Yeah,
kind of made like a middle outcast line almost.
And you had it there. You had the data there the whole time that proved that he could play, but you just didn't know how to utilize that. Right? It was, and then I go back to this Island of Misfits line that they have as this third line, right? I mean, fucking Joshua and Garland were fighting at the start of training camp. Does anybody remember that? Like, they got into a scuffle on ice because Garland, I'm sure, is like a little prick to play against, and Joshua is this big guy.
He's not going to back down.
No, he's not going to back down, and he obviously he knows how to play in his own right. And then you throw in a guy like Teddy Bluger, who is, like, I feel like supposed to be a bit of a depth piece in this lineup, right? all of a sudden you've got these three guys working together and everything works. Because if you're Connor Garland and you're the type of guy that has to have the puck on your stick and you're up in the second or the third line, well, there's probably better players than you that need to have the puck on their stick, and it's not working, right? It's why it didn't work with Bo. It's why it didn't work with Brock for all of those reasons, right?
It's why it didn't work with Miller or Petey.
Yeah,
same
Miller
thing. If you see the game live, you'd see them cross the line and he'd take the puck and he literally would spin himself into the corner with possession. No, it's true. He'd spin,
and then what?
And then you could just tell the other two guys were like, "What the fuck, dude? Like somebody put the puck on net here." But I give the Canucks credit because they were, and maybe it's too much credit because I think they would have moved him out. They could have, and I think they would have taken anything they could have got him just to get off the contract. But for whatever reason, they figured it out, and my God, it gives them a third line that the other teams in the league don't have. As far as controlling play.
It's perfect storm, right? I mean, his contract is just big enough and he's just small enough that no team wants to touch him, right? So they were almost forced into figuring out how to use him. And now, like you said, you have him working on this third line. Like I was looking at Money Puck earlier. So there's 100 lines that have played more than 100 minutes together this season.
Yeah.
And they're ranked 15th in the entire NHL. It's crazy.
That's a dream for an NHL Stanley Cup contender. If that wasn't the Canucks roster, if they didn't play in Vancouver and that roster was out of Vegas, we'd be like, that's a great third line. That's a third line that can win a Stanley Cup.
It really is. And we're talking about, like, I don't know if all of us have got there yet that have gotten like emotionally attached to this roster, but like we're at the halfway point in the season now and we're getting there with a lot of these players, right? And I feel super stoked about this third line. When was the last time I felt stoked about a third line?
2011.
I mean, this is it.
This is his eye injury.
Yeah, exactly. That's probably the last time, right? I mean, and you were even happy about Lapierre when he came in for taking over in that role.
We were
right?
ecstatic.
He played the role, yeah.
Yeah, and he did, but now we're getting into it, and that these are the folk heroes, right? Like these are the types of guys that turn into the guys that you talk about, for the Rafi Torreses of the world, the Manny Malhotras,
So Niels Aman is our Victor Oreskovich then.
Who knows? People are still talking. People still talk about Victor Oreskovich, right? I mean, that's the way that these playoff runs go, and these are the types of characters that come up over and over again when you're not talking about the big 5 or 6 guys. So pretty hilarious stuff, and like. Personally, I'm pretty stoked to see what a guy like Joshua can do in the playoffs.
So here's a quick question before we make fun of James and his Twitter account for a little bit. So you guys were talking about, kind of what we're going to, inside that window, right? And we're talking about, the whole Kuzmenko thing. But what about you guys made a great argument about what kind of player Connor Garland is. Let's say the Canucks go on a run this year, just for conversation's sake. Western Conference, maybe, who knows? Whatever the run looks like.
Roster, like the roster they have right now, or
right now. Yeah. So let's just say they go on a run and that line continues to do what it's been doing all season.
Yeah.
What do they do with Connor Garland? Do they sell high then at that point, knowing what we all are what you guys are kind of pointing out? Like, do you think there's enough teams out there that see, oh, well, Connor Garland's producing this, and this, but they're not also seeing the background story that, well, he does a bunch of spins and he has to be the guy with the puck. And if we put him with any other kind of line, he's going to, fizzle out. Like, is that the kind of thing where you kind of have this thing and you can unleash it and you can get paid for it, but you kind of have to act fast on it. Like someone's going to bite on it and you're going to get good return, but it'll have to be after this season. And I know there's a contract attached to it as well.
Okay, I'll let Ted have a hack, but my 2 cents on this is that the 2 players that are playing with Connor Garland will not be Canucks next year. And it will be Connor Garland with probably Pius Suter and a cheap $800,000 contract that fills the role of Joshua.
So go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No. And I just think that Connor Garland is going to be your third line staple for the duration of his contract with the Canucks. For the reason that
stays instead of
I don't think he's movable. I don't think another team's going to construct a line around him. And I think the Canucks have figured out how to use him and how to make him most effective. Unless somebody comes along and knocks their socks off.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate this. I agree with the Bluger thing. I think that Dakota Joshua is going to score 20 goals this year, and I think he's going to price himself out. I love the player. I like what he does. I like that mold, that fit. But I think that it ultimately ends up being a guy like Podkolzin on the line. filling that exact spot in the
100%.
exact same role that they want Joshua doing right now. And that is the guy that you want Puck Colson to be, right? That heavy forward, down low, good hands in close, has a shot, intelligent player, just hasn't had the reps yet, right? That was probably the best thing about, a guy like DiGiuseppe making this opening night roster, because it afforded somebody like Puck Colson time to just stay down on the farm and develop. It worked last year for Höglander, and now it's working this year for Puck Colson. So I mean, you kind of have to be optimistic about how that goes, right?
Yeah, and I don't mean to be pessimistic. I just don't think in any world with the Canucks trying to do what they need to do with Pettersson, what they're going to need to do with Hronek, what they actually need to do to probably add some elite scoring at the top of their lineup, there's going to be no money for those two guys. None. They're going to cash out.
That's true, because Hronek's going to make at least $10 million. So
yeah, I mean, think of the Hawks, and then think about what Troy Brouwer was to that squad, and then think of Dakota Joshua.
Yeah. We can find another Troy Brouwer or Dakota Joshua, and I think you're bang on. I think you already have him, and unless you move him as something bigger, he's exactly who's going to fill that role.
Yeah, and I can tell you that Chicago didn't want to get rid of those guys, but that's the way she goes, right? I mean, there's guys that are going to be on the roster that'll price themselves out, and I think.
So you can afford to feel sorry for yourself and have to get rid of those guys when you're winning championships, not just winning. They won as much as you could win in the window that they had. And yeah, they signed some long-term deals, but they did because they're like, well, let's just keep running it back until we can't anymore. And yeah, they look like awful deals at the end. But do you think anyone in that organization is really complaining? I mean, there's a bunch of other stuff, but hockey-wise, do you think anybody in that organization is complaining like, well, we did these things to ourselves on the ice and we have these really bad contracts. Oh, but we have 3 Stanley Cup rings to talk about. That's not a problem. That is not a problem.
Flags fly forever, and winning solves all problems.
It does, and that's the kind of thing where who knows? But I mean, geez, if we're talking about a Cup champion next year, like, it really sucks that we had to get rid of Joshua and this. Like, well, we have the next guy coming up, and we've got the Willanders, and we've got the DPDs, and like we've got guys coming, so it's not like it's all over. It's just we don't have that exact thing. We just have to reinvent what those things are next year.
Like imagine being a bad team and having a good Dakota Joshua and Teddy Bluger playing on your third line and having a really dominant third line, right? And then having to make that call later on, being like, we know we're a bad team, but this is a good line. We have to find a way to keep these guys together. Like that's not the case that they're in right now, right? This team has won just a bucket full of games. Yeah, a bucket full of games at the early point of the season. It's afforded them so many luxuries, right? Like we see guys like Nikita Zadorov getting scratched or Ian Cole getting scratched, and not for the wrong reasons, like maintenance days and things like that to keep guys fresh and having to feel good about putting in a Casey DeSmith, not just because he's been really good and he can play, but like because we also need to give Thatcher Demko the rest. And if it doesn't go well, like no big deal. We have this big cushion of games that we're working through. And if you look back into like November and early December, there was some up and down spots playing a lot of 500 hockey, right? But they didn't deviate from the plan. And I think that's the kind of load management that you can only get from having a really successful first half of the season. And that's going to just open up so many more doors for them down the road. And then because you're in that situation, you don't have to worry about, what are we going to do with Joshua next year? They probably know that he's gone and he's done. So they're already working on a succession plan for him instead of working on what they're going to have to do to re-sign a guy like that. And that only comes from having this big cushion early on in the season to afford all of these things.
Yeah, they 100%. And I think you have to give some credit to I think we're allowed to just sit back and give some credit to the organization for, I mean, they were given the pieces, like, let's not kid ourselves. Pettersson, Hughes, Demko, sure. Besser to a lesser degree, because I think had somebody taken him, he'd be gone. The decision between Miller and Horvat for asset management, because that's really what I think they did. I think they looked at it as a sole business, was like, what is this guy going to cost? What is this guy going to cost? What can we get for player X and what can we get for player Y? And then they enacted that plan. We didn't see it. We didn't see it till it happened. There's no way anybody else is going to tell me this time last year they saw Horvat getting dealt. Not a chance. Because we thought he was captain. That's just not what they do in Vancouver. They don't trade their cap. I mean, I guess they do. But
again,
it's just not something that's in their history. They're typically very loyal to the leaders on their team and the organization. And all of a sudden he's gone. But credit to the guys. And what I think as a Canucks fan that I've never had in my 45 years of being a diehard is that they've never once had this type of management and coaching staff where I sit back and be like, them guys got some cups. Like this isn't their first rodeo. They're not. I liked Mike Gillis. I liked a lot of what he did. I loved that era as Canucks because we were like kind of like the badasses in a way. Like we were doing things different. Yeah, everybody kind of had
doctors and
we were arrogant.
Nutritionists, yes.
We weren't used to this, so we kind of wrote it out. And then we just had our ass handed to us for a decade. So I kind of got, I had to sit back and take that. But now I sit and I'm just like, hey, this is great. I don't have to worry. I don't have to sit on Cap Friendly and make 8 trades because I can't trust the management to do it. And it's funny they never did do what I thought they should do. But anyway,
no kidding.
It's funny they never listen, hey? But sitting there and watching them now and the moves that they make, and they're methodical and they're well thought. And I mean, has there been anything that they've done that you can't say they did with conviction?
Everything's in that way.
Do you think that there's even a chance that Teddy Bluger and Puig Suter and Ian Cole sign with this organization if the coaching staff that's in place isn't here, and that the management group that's in place isn't here? Like, they bring all sorts of rep, and that's what has those guys. That's the reason we have good veteran players filling these roles and not top AHL players filling these roles.
Yeah,
that one reason right there.
Or overpaid contracts just to get the guy here, whether it's extra year or extra dollars or extra term, which is what we were having to do to try to justify getting players to arrive in Vancouver for a period of time.
And now they're creating a model where when those guys leave, that's going to be that next phase. Like, well, as long as PD and Quinn and Demko are here, you guys want in? Because we can make room after this run's done. And all of a sudden it becomes that destination place, which it used to be. And as long as you still have that coaching staff and the guys up top, I mean, James, you and I chatted about this last night. You go from Rick Tocchet, Wayner's in town to see Tocchet coach. Neat. Yeah. Oh, Adam Foote's back there. Oh, he was okay. Oh, Sergei Gonchar's back there. Yeah, he did all right. He played with some pretty decent teams. Right. And then we've got the Sedins that are sitting there, on an off day, like, hey, maybe let's get some work with the Sedins. Are you kidding me? That is an embarrassment of riches. And then the one thing that we haven't forgot about, but we just don't have to talk about a whole lot, you've also got an Ian Clark that is still there, making sure that the goaltending is still as elite as it was when we had the Roberto Luongo. Like, it's so ridiculous.
I think the Canucks deserve credit.
Chris Higgins, yeah.
Oh, yeah. If you go down the line, I think another guy that works for the Canucks right now that if you read in between the hockey circles, that Scott Young is a guy that pops up a lot when they're talking about collegiate and development. Yeah. Same with Samuelsson over in Sweden right now. And if you hear the players talk, so not just the interview or the puff piece or whatever the media is talking about, but if you read the players' interviews, often they're going to bring up the names. And I think in today's NHL and today's player, coaching is communicating, right? And I think that the days of coaching and everything being on a whiteboard and it's either the fire and brimstone or the pat on the back, all of that is kind of, to me, it ebbs and flows with the course of the season. I think what you have in the Canucks organization right now is you have communicators that are communicating what their expectations are, and then if you don't meet those expectations, okay, here's how we're going to do it. They've taken out the player's ability to second guess themselves, right? They're saying, and I think the best example of that, we've seen it live, is this season, is Tyler Myers. And now here's a guy who loves, everyone's kicked this guy. Okay, fine, whatever. I don't love his game. It is what it is. I don't mind his size. He's 6'6". He's a right-handed guy and he skates. Okay, cool.
About that, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. He's got a role for sure. But what they've done with him is they've taken him and said, hey, look, this is a guy that you can never tell me that Tyler Myers didn't try hard. In fact, I'd say 90% of his most glaring mistakes were because he was trying too hard, right? But what they've done is they've communicated with the player as to what the expectations are, how they want him to play, and then given him the tools to do that, and then given him the rope to do so. Well, that's what a professional hockey player is, right? And so they've done that, and I think we've seen it on the ice, and I think you can extend that throughout the lineup. Is they've identified roles, They've communicated what their expectations are. They've communicated that steady through the media, through the fan base, and then ultimately what we see on the ice. And they haven't done it for show. They haven't done it for their next contract. They've done it because it results in winning. And I think that's, to me, the biggest shift in the organization in the last 12 months.
I want to feed off of that because we did bring you on and there's a big thing you want to chat about. I think we're going to, we may forego your Twitter thing. We're just basically, long and short of it is, you can't have a burner account handle because nobody's buying it. You have some pretty good takes, but nobody's going to be reading what a burner account has to say because usually they're going to think, oh, it's a bot or it's an OnlyFans.
It's not even a burner account; it's a bot account.
That's a bot account.
I don't even know what it is. Ted, you helped me set that up like 14 years ago. Do you not remember?
I remember that my last instructions were pick a name.
And I never did. It was too hard. What do I need a name? Who wants to hear? No.
We're gonna sit down at a Tim Hortons or a Starbucks, and we're gonna open up your phone, and we're gonna make this happen for you.
I don't even know my passwords. Like I was telling Ryan this, like I can't. Like if you told me to get onto my Twitter and fix, I wouldn't even know how. Like I'm lost. My kids, Kara, everyone in my family makes fun of me because I can't handle social media. I don't even know what half of it does. I think I learned how to hit the like button, at some point in time. I was like, wow, this is great. People respond. And then if you read people's responses and stuff, and I don't know. Anyways, I am good to figure out.
I'm amazed that you actually got to this far. Like I was on a podcast.
I'm amazed.
Do you guys even know what that means? Like I can't even
regularly.
It was
regularly.
Yeah.
It's not. I'm a disaster. I'll figure it out though.
We're gonna get you. We got to get you figured out because I think you've got some amazing takes to say. Ted, should we forego top 5 this week? Because I'm gonna tell you what it was, and you tell me if you guys are willing to debate it. But James has a really hot take on Team Canada and their.
Yeah, let's keep talking hockey. I'm fine to talk Team Canada too, and they're ridiculous. Never mind. You just go ahead. Let's talk.
Okay, so we're talking about winning. We're talking about communication. We're talking about getting a team to a championship caliber, developing. The Canucks are doing a lot of these things. They're developing their talent. Canada used to develop, and they used to be an absolute juggernaut. We've all kind of seen it. We've all kind of seen this change. We've seen them win too, but we've seen this change. We've seen how college hockey all of a sudden is a big deal, how high school hockey in the States is a big deal, the national development program, how many guys a season or two ago, I mean, Chris Faber used to talk about all the time on his show, how all these development guys are getting drafted. And yet we look at major junior and it's not quite the way, it's not quite what we're not seeing necessarily the results, if you will, of past, the pageantry of the World Juniors. It seems like that's where, the star kind of bursts at that point, and then there's no afterthought. James, you've got a lot of thoughts on kind of Canada's program, but not necessarily Canada, more the US program.
Yeah. Okay. So this can go a lot of different directions. I'm going to just say this. I've been obviously involved in hockey for a long time, and I've seen firsthand the development model. I've been part of the Hockey Canada development model, and I'm actually not here to I don't want to ever be on a soapbox. I don't think it's fair for anybody really to get onto a soapbox and say Hockey Canada is failing at this or failing at that. I think what Hockey Canada needs to do, and we as a hockey nation need to understand that the development model that we've operated under for the better part of the last 2 generations, which is, let's say, the last 20 to 30 years, in saying that model has changed. And I think it's changed so much. And I think we're seeing the results of the United States model versus, and we use the World Juniors as the marker. So when I was watching this year's World Juniors, I actually didn't have a problem with Team Canada. I just simply thought, because you have birth years that are stronger than others, right? There wasn't, and I know everyone always likes to say, oh, if this guy was here or if that guy was there, the results might have been, sure, absolutely. Sure. If Bedard was there.
I mean, they did miss a few guys like Crystal and is a Greg, or what's the dude up, Riley Height or whatever his name is out of PG. Yeah. They were definitely missing some scoring talent.
No, for sure. But what the reason why I think, and here's me in oh man, there's just so many. I think we should actually, well, you could go on it forever. I think it's really important to know what Hockey USA is doing and the way that they've changed their models down there and incorporate so much of what they were doing in all sports into the way that they develop hockey. So they've had their U.S. National Development Program. That's the top of the program that we see, right? And when you see your players at the draft from USA Hockey or from the World Juniors, those players are often developed in a core of 20 to 30 players that they funnel up over the years, right?
Oh, yes.
And then that becomes their elite core team that we see, and their whole purpose of being together is to produce at those tournaments, right? Where Hockey Canada has it spread out throughout the country, and players come from here or there, and there's a core that plays together, but they don't train together, they don't live together. They're not sole purpose in the sport at that time and at that age is to produce in those tournaments.
Yeah, specifically designed to cultivate talent and continuity.
Right. Yep. Yes, exactly. So I do think that the results that the Americans get are going to continue to trend. I think I saw a thing the other day where Canada, in the last 20 years, Canada had won 10 and the United States had won 5 or 3. Anyways, going through that though, I think what I'm seeing, what I saw in minor hockey is USA Hockey specifically has this ability to develop the middle part of their development pyramid, right? So typically in not everyone, man, this subject's tough because I think a lot of people take it. But in Hockey Canada right now, you generally have 2 pools of players. You have players that are entry level, learning how to play, learning how to skate, learning the game, minor hockey, and then you have the super achievers, the ones that come out of minor hockey, enter private programs, private programming, be it academy or other private programs that are being offered across all of Canada now. It used to just be in Southern Ontario, but it's really expanded over the last 10 years. And what it happens is you're eliminating the development model for the middle part of that. And that's where I feel like so much of the development in the United States is ahead of where Canada is. We either start the sport or you end the sport, but you don't stay in the sport. And the reason for it is because of costs and the limited amount of ability to push through that system, because the system's result is really only at the major junior level and then on to, your World Junior roster or what have you, and then on to pro. So, but this has got so many legs to the conversation. But I think for people just as the average hockey fan, and they say, "Oh, how come hockey? Canada didn't win this year?" I think guys who take shots at the kids is just, I don't know if you guys saw.
Oh, it's awful. You can't do that. Like it's.
Like,
I mean, you've got teenagers, Ted. You've got, I'll have a teenager as of this weekend. Like these are kids. If you're 18 years old, is still a kid. And
their life. In their moment, this is what people forget is those 14 days that they're representing Canada and their World Junior jersey goes over their back. That is the highlight, the top of the top for them at that moment in time.
Yeah, most guys will never get past that level of success. And to be completely clear, this isn't you talking poorly about the kids that play the game. You're talking about the system in which they're developed in.
I think our system in Canada, I think we have, and I think there's some changes. Like I'm seeing it, I'm seeing it at the lower levels. I just think we need to be aware as a hockey nation that we need to be able to change and adapt with the development model, and that we have a very limited resource of hockey here in our country right now. And I don't think I understood it until my and I'm speaking this personally, but I saw my kids going through it with how much limited access kids have in general to the different programs or what are being offered in Canada compared to what I ended up seeing down in the United States. I'm just very, very, very small sample. I had a chance to go down last year, play an exhibit of the kid, anyways, I get to pay the bill. But we got to go down and watch the kids, group of 12-year-olds play, and it was out of a 4-game series out of Seattle area. And so we were given the opportunity to go to the Seattle Kraken practice facility and watch. And so not ever knowing the facility, and that's kind of where this is taking me, is that it was honestly, we pulled up into this mall and we go in and it's 3 sheets of ice They had 2 tournaments going on. I think they had something like 38 teams there, all from around, Western Canada or Western United States, Northwestern United
Pacific Northwest. Yeah.
The facility was first class. There isn't a facility like that with that type of complex, but just the level of play it wasn't just the level of play, it was the level of accessibility to the ice, and it was a level of accessibility to the community as hockey that I couldn't believe compared to what we get. And what I mean by that is it costs us $200 to $300 for a sheet of ice. You are basically putting 10 to 15 kids on that sheet of ice if you can, and you're getting an hour to 2 hours of development time a week, just depending on which programs. And I know people will say, "Oh, we do this, we do that." Fine, great. I'm not here to debate that at all. But the accessibility of the ice compared in just the market of Seattle alone, which is just very much in its infancy of developing hockey, and to look at that and expand on that and say, okay, how are they doing? So your per capita ice compared to what we have in Canada, it's not even close. And I know that's not across the United States completely, but then if you trickle it down and you talk to people that are in Anaheim or in LA, even Arizona, which we all pick on the Coyotes, but if you take just a moment and just look back and look at things from a wider lens, I don't think we all realize how much that we're, I would say, shrinking our development pool in Canada compared to the expansion of that pool in the United States. And I think that's why we're seeing such a general push of players. And if you start looking at rosters in the NHL, the rosters in the NHL are in the end result. It's the end result for most guys' career. I made the NHL. I played 10 years. I played 2 years. I played 10 games. I played 2 games. It's still the end result, right? And so if you look through that, you say, okay, and you start looking at their places of origin and what they're doing and where their development is. You can take the Vancouver Canucks roster right now, do a trick, go through it and look at it from a pure nationality standpoint. And this isn't to criticize, like I said, I don't want everyone thinking I'm criticizing Hockey Canada. I'm actually not. I'm saying, hey, look, I think there are things that we need to look at in our development model and figure out how to make sure that we're still developing kids from the middle part, not just to play for fun and to start, but I mean to carry it through so that there are more players playing, because the volume of players playing are shrinking because the sport is becoming more and more difficult to obtain. And that, to me, is a fundamental problem in the game. And I do think we won't see those results of that for another 10 years.
Well, but
Where it's almost the opposite. I look at my one daughter, and she's finally at the age where she's able to compete for rep teams on soccer.
Right. Yeah.
And you look at where soccer or Soccer Canada, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
and their development model seems to be like, let's get as many kids into as many programs as possible, and eventually we will tier it up and we'll take the elite, but we can move up and down, like especially in the Okanagan here, how they've just changed systems here, and they basically have, like, it's almost a farm system where you can go up and down, but as the talent increases,
Right.
they can start saying, okay, well, we can bring you up to this level, and we're going to keep developing you on the same mentality, on the same program, the same process, but we're going to put you with better players. We're still going to keep doing everything with the other players you were playing with, so they're going to get the same opportunity. Maybe you excel and you actually have the talent to go to that next level, and so on and so forth. But you look at soccer in Canada specifically, and you look at a guy like Alphonso Davies. Well, I mean, did we ever think we had a couple soccer stars from Canada, Christian Sinclair, and we've got Craig Forrest, and there's been some great players, but now we've got a guy where he gets one of the richest transfer deals and goes out and plays in Bayern Munich, and like, oh yeah, that's our guy. And then we go and make the World Cup, and we actually score goals, and now all of a sudden Canada, not a soccer power, but now they're
homegrown talent though. But for the first time, you could say that Canadian roster had some true homegrown talent on that, right?
But you can see that you can see that now, as at the grassroots level, you can see, hey, you know what? There is actually an opportunity for me to continue to grow. And if I want to make soccer my job and my life and my career, there is enough opportunity throughout the country where I can make that happen, and I have access to it. Whereas you're basically saying is it's becoming a little bit tougher to make that happen.
I think I go back to the middle part of the pyramid, right? I think that's such an important part of your discussion, James, is that there's the ability to get you into hockey and like it and enjoy it. But if you're not one of those guys that pops and goes to the top, that's why Canada's been so good at producing like elite talent, right? Because they find those guys and then they really push them to succeed and become the best, right? But if you're a guy who's only playing house hockey and you want to get better and grow your game, there's no room to grow it from I'm better than house, but I'm not good enough to be in the elite levels of the programs and the camps, right? And that's where the problem a little bit comes in. And there's the fact that the game is incredibly expensive. There's recessions that have been going on for the past however many years. Playing hockey is expensive. It falls by the wayside. Kids start lending their athletic abilities to other sports that are easier to access and are easier to play and have more coaching available to them as a result. Absolutely. And this takes away from the sport. In a nation where hockey is kind of the bloodline, there's less and less of that every year. And it specifically comes, and I'm so glad that you mentioned this, but it becomes that middle part of the pyramid that Canadians in general are missing out on.
Oh, 100%. And you see that, I think the bigger centers, you see it's a bit more prominent because of the volume of people. So you don't necessarily see that the middle part is being eaten alive. But if you come into these smaller communities, these middle communities, and keep in mind that like Eastern Canada has had their major midget league and the Greater Toronto Hockey League. They've been doing some privatized hockey for a number of years, and those leagues are fantastic at developing the talent and that top end talent. And we're just starting to see that kind of arrive in Western Canada a little bit. So I think the development, what I mean by that is that the development model in Canada, I think, is changing and shifting right now. But what I don't want to see as a nation that loves hockey and that truly is a part of our lifeblood, if you will, as a nation, is exactly that, is that completely eroding of the middle part of the development model so that it's either entry level or my parents can pay for me to play. And I think that because that result, we won't get the results that we've had in the years coming up to this. I think anybody who's been through it, and if you see it, if you take a step back, you realize that's exactly what's going on. And I don't think that's a Hockey Canada necessarily problem. I think that's some of society. But what I want is if I was hockey commissioner for a day, I would want to invite as many people to that conversation and make sure that we're touching on it and that we're aware of it. And then that we start taking some action plans to do something about it. Because otherwise, I feel like we're going to become a Sweden or a Finland. And I'm not saying they're not good hockey nations, but I'm saying where you're going to develop X amount of players and you're going to take one or two stabs at a national championship by, World Juniors or men's Olympic. And you're going to do that once every 10 years or once every cycle of players. And the ones that I really think have this depth of development because of the volume of players that are continuing playing and starting to play more and more is in hockey in USA. And I think, and it's so funny because and we can get into that. That's another whole conversation of their development model and what they focus on. One of my soapboxes of years has been dry floor training. That's something that we almost completely don't bother with in Canada. We're starting to see some of it now with the fitness, which is great. I've seen that really come around in the last 5 years, but we still don't have dry floor facilities to train. And yet if you were to go to, other hockey markets like you say Anaheim or San Jose, there are facilities that you can go to and train dry floor. Well, there are some facilities in Vancouver that you train dry floor. We don't have that in some of our secondary communities. So that's another soapbox for another day. But anyways, that's what I wanted to bring up was that, it's not so much I don't know if it's it's
not crapping on it. You're just pointing out that there needs to be something to change if we want to keep doing what they had been doing. And I mean, I guess the other thing is you want to make sure, like we talked about the Canucks, and I can try to bring it back here. Like we've been talking about the Canucks for an hour here, and we've been talking about the Canucks all season. That's what we do. That's what the show is. But I mean, you want to get to the point again where it's fun because I mean, you get in like whether you're playing shinny with the boys or the girls or your friends or whatever, that's a lot of fun. Like you want to get to that point where it's not just entry level and you talk about, the Tim Hortons, Timbits games, and seeing all the little kids out there, and like they're out there. We can't make it lame sounding, but I mean they're out there having fun. And now you're seeing the pro game where we're watching and they're having fun. Well, you want to see it in the middle too. You want to see where they keep having fun, they keep getting better. And I think if there is that disconnect where they're not developing straight through, then yeah, I mean, as someone that isn't involved in the development of the game of hockey, more so just on this side here, I think of any sport, you would want to see that development from beginning, middle, and end, and not just, well, hopefully you keep on going, and if you're really good, we're going to see you on the other side. If not, like, hopefully you can make a connection a little bit later on. Like that just, I mean, it sounds like a flawed argument at that point. So I get where you're coming from. I'm not sure where Ted kind of went, but James, we could probably talk with you for the next 6 hours, because that's literally all we would do. Ted decided to come back. Thanks, Ted. We're gonna have to get you on as a semi-regular for sure, because I mean, you have a few things to say, which is kind of nice. Maybe we'll find a way to loan you a better microphone. I mean, sorry, not you, Ted, or not you, James. Ted, I meant. Can't hear a thing. It's been a lot of fun. Like, this is one of those things that this is why we kind of started this show, because once all of us left the good old Jersey City days, I mean, we still had opinions, we still wanted to argue, and we still wanted to get our point across about something there, Ted. We still wanted to get our point across and talk hockey, and in this case, Canucks. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So thanks for coming out. We're gonna definitely have to get you back on here and make something of a semi-regular appearance, because I think there's some good content there for us. Anyway, we're gonna steal all of the goodness of James.
No, you can go. I told you I was gonna leave you with one burner for the week, or for the next 2 weeks, or whatever. It's just something that picks my ass, and so I'm gonna leave you with this. And it's that I can't accept, even though I think he's played fantastic, and I've actually always believed in the player, but Noah Juleson cannot be in a top 6D unless he wears a +2 pant size. Why is he showing 2 inches of his leg? You know what I'm talking about.
Times are tough, man. We just went through a recession, like you said.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
It's +2. He's the only guy on the whole defense corps that wears short shorts. It fucking pisses me off, and it burns me. And so I needed to make that comment.
No one at home.
It was like when Taylor Pyatt was skating around those days when we had him. He had a bucket that was like 2 sizes too small, and it was flopping around on his head. Inexcusable.
Yeah, weird. If you want to be a top 6 NHL defenseman, +2 pound size.
That's an equipment manager thing, I think, though.
I think he thinks it's stylistic.
Well, it's a Mike Bernstein thing, eh?
I think so. Maybe we throw him under the bus on that. Like, that's up to him. Like, he's got to recognize, if you're going to be elite, if you want to keep being elite, like, you got to see that.
You know what I'm talking about? If not, go back, pull some Juleson highlights, and question his pant size.
I mean, James,
I noticed it last year when I bought like the AHL package for the playoffs, and I noticed last year playing, that it was, he looks like he's wearing Connor Garland's pants.
Why? So there's this week's burner. Enjoy.
Not James, one more thing. So you obviously big fantasy football guy.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So a certain head coach in New England is now retired. Does that mean that all fantasy football is going to go back to normal now, and we're not going to have?
It's possible. For 24 years, that man wrecked my life. So, I mean, like, honest to God. You know what? Who knows? I have a sneaky feeling that's not the last time we'll see him as a head coach. I have a feeling he'll be coaching, maybe the Chargers, which if you guys know me in fantasy football, that's about the justice of what's going to fucking happen. Because I traded for Eckler this year, and Belichick's going to go there, and he's not going to run the ball for 16 fucking games. And then I'm going to park him on the bench. And then the one game that he plays, and
Rex Burkhead's going to come out of retirement and score 3 TDs.
Yeah, you're going to go back. You're going to have to carry like 4 Chargers running backs. You just never know. Going to know who to start. It's going to be great.
I'm going to draft. Yeah, exactly. Through rounds through 11 through 16, I'm going to draft every Chargers running back they have at camp because that's the only way I'll figure it out.
That's actually pretty good logic. That actually checks out. Pretty much checks out. Teddy, any final words?
No, this was great. It just it feels like old times. I'm glad that we can do this. I hope we can do some more.
I think I know James would be excited to do it. We had our pre-chat last night, and I was like, "Yeah, 5 minutes." And then I look, I'm like, "Oh crap!
Yeah.
It's been like 35 minutes since I chatted with him."
Yeah,
So-
no one ever listens to me, so it's nice to have a voice.
Yeah, they're like, "You're gonna get off," and your wife's gonna be like, "Did you get it out of your system?"
Yeah, exactly. I don't have to hear it now.
Yeah,
Yes,
are you gonna shut up? Like, no, they haven't lost in over a week.
Did they agree with you about Julison's pants? Yes, dear.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah.
They know what I was talking about.
That needs to be your new Twitter handle, Jules' pants.
With one.
Jimmy Ray, thanks for coming by. Maybe hang around after we hit the end stream here. Everybody, this has been our welcome back episode of the absolute best Canucks podcast and the number one podcast, if you will, for Canucks hockey. This is the PP1 podcast. We have the best color scheme. We have the best merch. We have the best things. We're on the Hockey Podcast Network. As I said, a menagerie of hockey podcasts. You want to check them out. There's some good content out there. I've been looking at a few of the guys on Twitter, and there's a lot to like about the Hockey Podcast Network right now. There's lots of cool things going on. Obviously, DraftKings promo code THPN. Go make yourself some bets. Go win yourself some money. On behalf of James, our guest James, good friend of the show, James Rayburn, my boy Teddy Wong in his new podcast studio. Gotta love that door and that window. I'm Ryan. Have a wonderful Canucks evening. Go Canucks, go. Peace out.